are talking the Huntress, Rune of the Dead, which is also known in Germany as Viking Saga, Rune of the Dead. And this one is directed and co-written by Rasmus Terstius and stars a whole bunch of Swedish actors who I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce because it will just be, quite frankly, a massacre. And as you can probably imagine, it's a Viking-style kind of story. Obviously, Viking's very popular on the kind of the TV show at the moment with the History Channel show. So here we have a movie with a slight supernatural twist. So what the movie focuses on this kind of family that are living out in the kind of like the wilderness ultimately, and then we have this our main character Runa, who is this kind of the huntress of the title, and she's sort of like a young adult. The kind of the provider really for the family, whilst the father is away and kind of like doing some type of Viking raid, as they do. And then we have her mother, her younger sister, and her blind grandfather. One day, Runa discovers this kind of wounded warrior out in the woods, and she brings him back to kind of nurse him back to health. And he may know her kind of like long lost father. And as the movie progresses, kind of like more things are kind of introduced, and there's even a potential supernatural threat of undead Vikings coming to seek revenge upon this family. I don't want to go into too much for it, and there is a reason for that, which I'll come on to. But let's talk about what works first of all. I have to say here, this is a beautiful looking movie. I mean, it's obviously filmed in Sweden, and it really benefits from having this kind of like this kind of European authentic kind of flavour for obviously a story which is obviously about 9th century kind of Norsemen. But the actual cinematography here is absolutely fantastic. There are some absolutely beautiful shots, and the film production have done a great job of recreating this kind of this 9th century world here in all its kind of like rustic rural glory. I think everything from the kind of the set design to the costuming to the kind of the hair and makeup all does a great job here of really giving it an authentic feel. And obviously, I always sometimes struggle with kind of judging kind of acting from foreign films, but this is actually spoken in English language, despite the fact that everyone here is from that kind of neck of the woods. But it is that English spoken. But even with that, I feel that it still has an air of authenticity here. And it plays a lot like a drama, this movie. So I would say 90% of this film is more of a drama than anything else. It's not a horror. It's not a fantasy film. Although that just comes in the very last end of the movie. For the most part, this is kind of almost like a family drama. Obviously, our family have their own problems, and we kind of see almost like the parental difficulties in 9th century, Norse mythology, basically. So it's kind of interesting to kind of watch for that, and having this kind of family dynamic in this kind of in this instance. So that was all good. And the acting, I've got to say, I thought was all I liked every character here. I thought it was well acted and gave a good performance, believable. The problem with this film is that it is fairly long. It's just under 2 hours, and there's virtually no plot. And this is the real problem here. I saw on IMDb this has got a really low rating, and I thought, wow. I started watching it. I couldn't really understand why, but as the film kind of went on, I thought it kind of understood, because the plot is just meandering, and because there's virtually none of it. It's just this family struggling, and then the return of the father ultimately, which happens kind of midway through. And we're told a lot of exposition about what has happened. We're told about all these raids. We don't see any of it. I'm assuming that is obviously for budgetary reasons. It kind of reminds me of the Birka film that came out earlier on in the year, where we have a Viking berserker who's going off killing monsters, and we don't see any of it. It's the same with this one. Don't see any of that. We're just told about it a lot. There may well have been this curse at the end of it. Again, we don't see any of this. We're just told about it. And then right at the end of the movie, we have all these undead, zombie-like Vikings kind of turn up. But even then, I have to say is that there's I saw one effect shot of a kind of like a skeletal kind of Viking. The rest of it is just guys kind of like in the shadows, which does look spooky to a certain degree, but I wondered if it really needed the kind of the supernatural element to it, because it just seemed to be so kind of like not important to the actual. It could have just been people coming back for revenge or wanting the gold or something, but it just seemed like yeah, the actual supernatural element didn't seem all that, and almost looked like it was kind of like this CGI kind of like skeletal face put on someone after the fact. And I've got to say, the battle scene at the end isn't the most exciting of battle sequences, I've got to say. Again, it's a lower budget film, I would suggest, but nonetheless, it's so slow paced. I would have suggested the movie had at least 20 minutes cut out of it, maybe even half an hour, to kind of like, it just didn't need it, because there's virtually so little plot here, and it doesn't need to be this long. And when we do get to the kind of like our confrontation towards the end of the movie, at that point you've kind of sat through a lot of drama, and you know, you've got invested in the characters to a certain degree, but I thought you can still do that with a kind of a shorter running time. And I feel we needed a little bit more, a little bit earlier, and kind of like a little bit more going on, to be honest with you, you know. So overall, I don't think it's as bad as the IMDb score that was about 3.5 out of 10. I don't think it's quite that bad, because there is a lot to like in regards to its production and its, you know, its cinematography and the way the movie was made, the acting. That is all good, but I feel here the problem is the script. It is just it's a too long a film, and there's just not enough actual story within the movie to kind of warrant that side. There should have been a little bit more to it. There's a lot of kind of like tell and don't show. And then when we do get to our confrontation, ultimately it's a little disappointing, because it just looks like a bunch of men, not kind of supernatural. It's the way they move, the way they kind of like that they fight. Like I said, there's one special effect shot that I see. Everything else kind of just looks like they're just regular guys. So the kind of the whole, you know, big kind of scary undead kind of Viking squad, or whatever you want to call them, yeah, it's a little bit of a kind of a little bit of a letdown at the end. So overall, it's technically a good film, and technically well made, I should say, on a kind of production standpoint, because there is a lot of well made footage here, but the actual story wise, it is weak and far too long. So I'm going to give this one, I'll give it a 6 out of 10. I do feel, if you like a dramatic film, the kind of the family drama stuff here is good. It just doesn't need to be quite as much of it, to be honest with you, because to support such a slight story. So 6 out of 10. I do think this is, technically speaking, a well-made production, but the script just kind of just lets it down. So have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.